My name is Eugenia, and at 67 years old, I never expected to uncover the truth about why my daughter Amelia hated me. For 15 years, she believed I was the villain in our family story. Then I found her journal hidden in a box of childhood belongings she asked me to store. Those pages contained her raw hatred toward me, but as I kept reading, something unexpected emerged. The truth about Harold, my ex-husband, and the elaborate web of lies that stole my daughter from me. If you are watching this, let me know where you are viewing from, and hit that subscribe button as I share how my daughter's words eventually set us both free. I live in a small Cape Cod-style house in Portland, Maine, just 3 blocks from the ocean. It is nothing fancy, but the blue shutters and white clapboard exterior make it distinctly New England, and it has been my sanctuary for the past 12 years. I moved here after my retirement from the Portland Public Library, where I worked as the head librarian in the children's section for over 20 years. My days are quiet now. I tend to my garden volunteer at the community center, teaching seniors to use computers and occasionally host my book club. It is a simple life, but one I had to fight hard to find peace within. Before the solitude of this house, before the lonely holidays and missed milestones, I had what many would consider a perfect family. I met Harold Peterson during my sophomore year at the University of Maine. He was studying business already, talking about the empire he would build while I was pursuing my degree in library science. Harold had charm that could dazzle anyone in a 5-mile radius. Tall, with perfectly combed dark hair and a smile that made you feel like the only person in the room, he had a way of making grand promises feel inevitable. We married the summer after graduation. Harold had already secured a position at a financial services firm in Portland, and I found work at the public library. 3 years later, our daughter Amelia was born. She had her father's dark hair, and my green eyes, a perfect blend of both of us. Those early years were beautiful. Harold would come home from work and scoop Amelia into the air, spinning her around as she giggled uncontrollably. We would have picnics in Deering Oaks Park on Sundays, and Harold would read stories to Amelia each night before bed. I truly believed we would grow old together, watching our daughter blossom into adulthood. The changes were so gradual that I barely noticed them happening. It started with small criticisms about the house not being clean enough when his colleagues came for dinner. Then questions about my spending, even though I had always been frugal. By the time Amelia was in elementary school, Harold had taken complete control of our finances, giving me an allowance from my own salary. When I would stand up for myself, Harold had a way of turning things around, making me question my own memory and perceptions. Did I really remember that conversation correctly? Was I being too sensitive? Was I the one who had agreed to that decision but forgotten? The doubt would creep in, and I would apologize just to keep the peace. But the most painful shift began when Amelia entered her teenage years. Harold started scheduling father-daughter outings on days when I had important work commitments that had been on the calendar for months. When I would express disappointment at missing these events, he would sigh loudly within Amelia's earshot, saying things like, "Your mother has always put her career before family. We understand, do not we, princess?" He began to position himself as the fun, understanding parent while portraying me as rigid and work-obsessed. The reality was that my library job had consistent hours and a modest salary, while Harold frequently canceled family events for work emergencies and business trips. But Harold had a talent for reshaping reality, and Amelia, desperate for stability in her teenage years, began to accept her father's version of events. The more Amelia pulled away from me, the harder I tried to connect with her. I would try to engage with her interests, attempt to have mother-daughter days, but Harold would somehow sabotage these efforts. He would remind Amelia of my past parenting mistakes right before our outings or schedule appealing alternatives that made my offers seem dull in comparison. By the time Amelia was 17, my marriage had deteriorated beyond repair. I discovered Harold had been gambling away our savings and had taken loans against our house without my knowledge. When confronted, instead of showing remorse, he suggested I had always been bad with money and could not understand his investment strategy. That was the final straw that led to our divorce. The divorce was ugly and public. Harold spread rumors among our friends that I was unstable and difficult to live with. Many people we had known for years took his side, and I found myself increasingly isolated. But the deepest cut was when Amelia, then a high school senior, declared she would live with her father after the divorce was finalized. I still remember the conversation in our kitchen, the house half empty, as Harold had already moved out. Amelia stood before me, 17 years old, but looking somehow both childlike and ancient in her pain. "Mom, you have always put yourself first," she said, her voice flat. "Dad at least tries to understand me. He does not make me feel guilty for existing." The words struck me like physical blows. Had I really made my own daughter feel this way? Despite my protests and attempts to explain, Amelia had made up her mind. She moved in with Harold, and within months our communication dwindled to birthday cards and awkward holiday phone calls. The years that followed were the darkest of my life. I sought therapy, trying to understand where I had gone so wrong as a mother. My therapist, Dr. Lila Martinez, helped me see the patterns of emotional manipulation that had defined my marriage, but that knowledge did little to heal the rift with my daughter. I threw myself into my work, making the library a haven for other people's children, while my own remained estranged. Retirement came, and with it the quiet house in Portland. Amelia had graduated college by then, moved to Boston for a job in accounting, and our contact had become even more sporadic. I would send birthday and Christmas gifts that received brief thank you texts in return. I tried calling monthly, but our conversations were stilted and brief. Now Amelia is 32, established in her career, and our relationship remains distant. Every attempt I make to bridge the gap seems to hit a wall of polite resistance. For 15 years I have lived with the knowledge that my daughter believes I failed her, that I was the villain in her story. I have carried that weight every day, questioning every parenting decision I ever made. Then came the Thursday afternoon that changed everything. It was an unusually warm April day when the doorbell rang. I was not expecting anyone, and solicitors rarely made it to my quiet street. Through the peephole, I saw Amelia shifting nervously from foot to foot on my porch, and my heart immediately began racing. She rarely visited without weeks of planning and negotiation. I opened the door, trying to keep my voice casual, despite the surge of hope rising in my chest. "Amelia, this is a surprise." She looked different from the last time I had seen her at Christmas, more tired around the eyes, but somehow more settled in herself. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sensible ponytail, and she wore a light jacket despite the warmth of the day. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice carefully neutral. She gestured to her car parked at the curb, where I could see several cardboard boxes stacked in the back seat. "I need a favor. I am moving to London for work next month, and my apartment is too small to store everything. I have some childhood stuff I do not want to get rid of, but do not need to take with me. Could I leave a few boxes here?" The request was practical, not emotional, but I still felt a flutter of connection. She trusted me enough to safeguard her belongings. It was something. "Of course," I said, perhaps too eagerly. "Let me help you bring them in." We made 4 trips between her car and my spare bedroom, carrying boxes labeled in Amelia's neat handwriting: book school awards, yearbooks, childhood mementos. The conversation remained superficial. She asked about my garden. I asked about her new position in London. Neither of us ventured into deeper waters. As she prepared to leave, standing awkwardly in my entryway, I took a chance. "Would you like to stay for dinner? I could make that chicken dish you used to like." A flicker of something crossed her face, too quick to interpret. "Thanks, but I have plans tonight. Lots of goodbye dinners before the move." I nodded, hiding my disappointment. "Of course. Well, your things will be safe here for as long as you need." She hesitated, then gave me a quick, stiff hug. "Thanks, Mom. I will text you before I fly out." And then she was gone, her car pulling away from the curb, while I stood in the doorway, watching until it disappeared around the corner. I returned to the spare room and looked at the stack of boxes, these fragments of a life I had largely missed. Part of me wanted to leave them untouched, respecting Amelia's privacy. But another part, the mother starved for connection, wanted to open them immediately to glimpse the years I had lost. I compromised with myself. I would organize them neatly on the shelves I had installed, but I would not open them. I started with the heaviest box labeled books, lifting it onto the shelf. As I did, the bottom gave way, sending hardcover novels cascading to the floor. Cursing under my breath, I knelt to gather the books. Most were fantasy novels Amelia had loved, as a teenager, dog-eared and well-loved. As I restacked them, I noticed something wedged at the very bottom of the pile, a book unlike the others. It was a thick journal bound in faded blue fabric with no markings on the cover. I should have put it back immediately. I should have respected the obvious privacy of a personal journal. But as I moved to return it to the box, the journal fell open in my hands, and my own name leaped from the page like an accusation. I caught just a glimpse Mom thinks she can buy my forgiveness with. My hands trembled as I stared at those words. This was wrong. This was an invasion. And yet after 15 years of wondering what my daughter truly thought of me, how could I close this window into her mind? I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the journal heavy in my hands, wrestling with my conscience. In the end, the need to understand won out over principle. I turned to the first page. The journal began when Amelia was 15, the handwriting round and youthful with occasional hearts dotting the I's. The first entry knocked the wind from me. September 3rd. Dad says Mom has always been this way, more concerned about her precious books than her own family. I am starting to see it now. She missed my science fair presentation for a library conference. She knew how important this was to me. Dad took the whole afternoon off to be there, even though he has that huge client right now. He said she has always put herself first. I hate her sometimes. I nearly closed the journal then, the pain too acute to bear, but I forced myself to continue turning page after page of similar entries. Each one documented a perceived failure on my part. Each one twisted to present Harold as the hero in contrast to my villainy. October 21st. Mom got mad because I wanted to stay at Jaden's house past 10 on a school night. She always treats me like a baby. Dad talked to her and got her to agree to 11, but she was so cold about it. Dad says she resents how close he and I are, that she has always been jealous of our bond. It makes so much sense now. December 7th. Christmas shopping with Dad today. He let me pick out something really expensive for Mom, even though she probably will not appreciate it. He said she has never understood how to show gratitude properly. Sometimes I wonder why he even stays with her. The entries continued, each one a dagger. I read about events I remembered completely differently. The science fair I had desperately tried to attend only to have my car break down on the highway, leaving me stranded for 3 hours. The Christmas gift I had treasured a delicate silver bracelet that I wore until the clasp broke. The conversation about staying at Jaden's house that had never happened, as Harold had simply told Amelia she could stay out without consulting me. Reading these pages was like stepping into a parallel universe where I was unrecognizable to myself. Through Amelia's teenage eyes filtered through Harold's manipulation, I was cold, unloving, selfish, and perpetually disappointing. By the time I reached entries from her senior year, tears were streaming down my face. I read about her decision to live with Harold after the divorce, her certainty that she was choosing the parent who truly loved her, her relief at escaping my supposed emotional neglect. It hurt more than I could have imagined, confirming my worst fears about how my daughter perceived me. But something compelled me to keep reading, to bear witness to this alternate history of our relationship. As I turned the page to entries from Amelia's college years, I had no idea that the most shocking revelations were still to come. The college entries began with the same anti-mom sentiment, but as I continued reading, subtle shifts began to appear in Amelia's perspective. During her sophomore year at Boston University, she wrote, March 15th. Had a weird conversation with my roommate Tara today. We were talking about parents, and I was telling her how my mom always prioritized work over family. Tara asked what my mom did for a living, and when I said she was a librarian, Tara looked confused. She said librarians usually have set hours and not much overtime. She asked if Mom worked weekends or nights a lot. I realized I do not actually know. Dad always just said she was working when she missed stuff. I am going to ask Mom about her work schedule next time we talk. Probably just making excuses, though. This tiny seed of doubt surprised me. I had indeed worked a standard schedule at the library, rarely on weekends and never late into the evening. Those had been Harold's work patterns, not mine. I flipped forward, searching for more signs of Amelia, questioning the narrative she had been fed. Several entries later, she wrote, April 23rd. Called Mom today and asked about her work schedule when I was in high school. She seemed surprised by the question, but said she worked Monday to Friday 9 to 5 with one evening shift on Wednesdays until 8. She asked why I wanted to know, but I changed the subject. This does not match what Dad always told me. He said she was always working late, choosing work over family time. I do not know what to think. My heart raced as I read this entry. I remembered that call clearly, how confused I had been by the sudden interest in my old work schedule, and how quickly Amelia had moved on to other topics. I had no idea she had been questioning Harold's version of events. The entries continued with more inconsistencies appearing in Harold's stories as Amelia gained independence and perspective at college. October 12th. Dad called to say he cannot afford to help with next semester's textbooks because the market is down, but he just posted pictures of his new boat on Facebook. When I asked about it, he said it was an investment property that he co-rents. Something feels off. November 18th. Found an old birthday card from Mom while unpacking my winter clothes. Inside, she wrote about how proud she was of me and how she wished we could spend more time together. She included $300 with a note saying she knew books were expensive. I remember Dad telling me she forgot my birthday that year until he reminded her. But the postmark on the card is 3 days before my birthday. Dad's story does not add up. As Amelia progressed through her accounting degree, her financial awareness sharpened, and with it her scrutiny of Harold's management of the family finances. February 10th. Finance class is making me think. Professor Williams talked about financial abuse in relationships today, controlling all the money-hiding accounts, giving an allowance to an adult partner. It sounded exactly like what Dad did to Mom. I always thought Mom was bad with money because that is what Dad said. Now I am not so sure. April 4th. Asked Dad about the house sale after the divorce. The numbers he gave me do not add up with what I learned in my real estate finance class. Mom should have gotten much more from her equity. When I pressed him, he got angry and said Mom took advantage of his generosity during the divorce. But I looked up the property records online. Dad had taken out 2 equity loans without her name on them. Did Mom even know? Reading these entries felt like watching my daughter slowly awakening from a spell. Each questioned assumption, each recognized contradiction, was a step towards seeing the reality of Harold's manipulation. But the entries also revealed how deeply Harold had embedded his narrative, as Amelia would often rationalize away her doubts. May 2nd. Maybe Dad had good reasons for handling money the way he did. Mom probably was bad with finances and he was protecting the family. Still, I wish he would be more straightforward with me about my college funds. It was painful to read how, even as evidence mounted, Amelia struggled to reconcile the father she adored with the manipulator emerging in her discoveries. The cognitive dissonance was evident in her increasingly conflicted entries. By her senior year, the tone had shifted significantly. November 10th. Had Thanksgiving break planning call with Dad. When I said I wanted to spend 2 days with Mom, he immediately started listing all the ways she had disappointed me growing up. It felt rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. When I pointed out that Mom had never missed a college parents' weekend while he had missed 2, he changed the subject. I realized he does this every time I try to reconnect with Mom. Why does it threaten him so much? December 1st. Started seeing the university therapist. We talked about my parents' divorce and my relationship with both of them. Dr. Keller asked me to recall specific instances when Mom had chosen work over family like I always claimed she did. When I tried to list examples, I realized most came from Dad telling me she was working, not from my direct experience. I feel confused about everything now. The therapist seemed to accelerate Amelia's questioning process, providing professional perspective that helped her see the patterns more clearly. January 20th. Therapy session about manipulative relationships today. Dr. Keller explained gaslighting, making someone question their reality. I recognize so many of Dad's behaviors. The way he rewrites history, insists his version is correct, makes me doubt my own memories. I am starting to wonder how much he did this with Mom, too. By graduation, Amelia's entries showed growing suspicion about Harold's financial activities. May 10th. Dad was weird about money again at graduation. Kept saying how much he sacrificed for my education. When I asked to see the college fund statements he had always talked about, he got defensive. Said he had to use some of it for living expenses after the divorce because Mom took everything. But Mom has that same small house while Dad has upgraded twice. Something is very wrong here. The entries after college, when Amelia began her accounting career, revealed the most damning discoveries. September 3rd. Using my new financial knowledge to look back at childhood expenses. Dad always claimed Mom spent recklessly on herself. But I remember her wearing the same winter coat for years while Dad got a new one each season. Her car was 10 years old when they divorced. She bought clothes from discount stores while Dad wore designer suits. The math does not add up. October 15th. Found a box of financial documents from the divorce while helping Dad move to his new condo. Mom did not take him to the cleaners like he always claimed. She got far less than she was entitled to. The settlement shows she only asked for the small house and enough to finish paying for it. Dad kept the vacation property, his full retirement accounts, and his business interests. He has been lying to me for years. As I read these entries, a complex mix of emotions washed over me. There was validation in seeing Amelia discover the truth on her own. But there was also grief for all the years of relationship we had lost to Harold's manipulation and anger, that he had poisoned our daughter against me so effectively. I steeled myself and continued reading unprepared for the bombshell revelations that were about to come. As Amelia settled into her accounting career in Boston, her journal entries became less frequent but more substantive. Each entry showed her peeling back another layer of Harold's deception. January 5th. Had lunch with Dad's former business partner Trevor today. He seemed surprised when I mentioned Dad's gambling problems had started after the divorce. Said your dad has been fighting that demon since before you were born. Your mom tried everything to help him. I almost choked on my sandwich. Mom knew Dad always said she was oblivious to financial matters. Trevor must have seen my face. He got uncomfortable and changed the subject. Need to find out more. March 10th. Met Mom for coffee today. Worked up the courage to ask about Dad's gambling. She got very still, then asked how I knew. I told her about Trevor. She said Dad had struggled with gambling their entire marriage. Said she tried to help for years, therapy support groups taking over the finances temporarily. But he always went back to it. When I asked why she never told me, she said, "You idolized your father. I did not want to tarnish that relationship. You had already lost so much in the divorce. This is not the selfish mother Dad described all these years." Reading this, I remembered that coffee meeting vividly. Amelia's sudden question about Harold's gambling had caught me off guard. For years, I had protected Harold's secret from our daughter, not wanting to damage their relationship despite everything he had done to mine. Even after the divorce, I had never told Amelia the full truth about her father's addiction and financial deceit. In that moment at the coffee shop, I had seen the first real crack in the wall between us. Amelia's next entries showed her actively investigating her father's claims. April 28th. Went through old family photos today. Found albums Mom made of all my school events, with programs and photos carefully preserved. She has everything: field trips, recitals, science fairs, even the ones Dad said she missed. There are pictures of her sitting right in the audience. Did Dad lie about her absence, or did he somehow prevent her from coming, and then lie about it? Either way, the evidence of her involvement in my childhood is literally documented despite what Dad always told me. May 15th. Asked Dad about the science fair in 8th grade, the one I won first place for. He got this smug look and said, "Your mother chose a library conference over your achievement, remember?" I said, "But I found photos of her there." He got flustered, then recovered with, "Oh, she showed up late after you had already presented. Just like her to make a token appearance. I do not remember it that way, but I was so nervous that day." Could my memory be wrong? Or is Dad rewriting history again? I felt a surge of vindication reading this. That science fair had been so important to me. My car had broken down on the highway, and I had paid a tow truck driver $40. I could not spare to get me there in time to see Amelia receive her award. I had missed her presentation, but made it for the ceremony. In Harold's version, I had never showed up at all. As Amelia's career advanced, she began traveling to audit clients, and her investigations into Harold's stories intensified. August 3rd. Business trip to Portland this week. Visited Mom's old library and met her former boss, Mrs. Winters. Casually brought up Mom's work history. Mrs. Winters could not stop praising her, said Mom. Turned down 2 promotions that would have required evening work because she wanted to be home for me. Said Mom was the only staff member who never missed a day except for that horrible car accident when I was 13. Car accident. I have no memory of this. Called Mom later and asked about it. She seemed surprised I did not remember. Said she was hospitalized for 3 days after a drunk driver hit her on the way to my band concert. Said Dad brought me to see her in the hospital. I have zero recollection of this. How could I forget something so significant? September 20th. Found my childhood medical records while organizing papers. Age 12. I had severe strep throat. Mom was listed as the parent who stayed in the hospital with me for 4 nights. But I distinctly remember Dad telling relatives that he had to take care of me because Mom was too busy with work. Why would he lie about something so easily disproven? Did he think I would never see my own records? The entries became increasingly disturbed as Amelia uncovered more discrepancies. October 30th. Therapy session today about childhood memories. Dr. Brennan says that children can internalize parents' narratives so completely that they overwrite actual memories. She asked what evidence I have of Mom's neglect beyond Dad's stories. I realized almost everything negative I believe about Mom came from Dad, not my direct experience. The few genuine conflicts I remember with Mom were normal teenage stuff, not the profound neglect Dad described. I feel sick about this. November 12th. Thanksgiving planning call with Dad turned ugly. When I said I was spending the actual day with Mom and would see him Friday, he launched into his usual, "Mom was never there for you" routine. I interrupted and asked why there were photos of Mom at events he claimed she missed. He got angry, said I was being manipulated by her. When I pressed about specific inconsistencies in his stories, he hung up. He has never been unable to explain away contradictions before. Something has shifted. As Amelia's suspicions grew, so did her emotional turmoil. December 20th. Christmas with Dad was tense. He kept trying to reminisce about how he saved every Christmas when Mom dropped the ball. When I questioned specific stories, he got defensive and changed the subject. Later, I found a box of old Christmas cards in his office. There were dozens from Mom to me that I never received. They all had checks or gift cards inside. Did Dad intercept my mail from Mom all these years? I feel physically ill. January 3rd. Cannot sleep. Keep thinking about all the cards and gifts from Mom I never received. All the times Dad told me she forgot my birthday, or did not care enough to call while he hid her attempts to connect with me. I confronted him today. He denied it at first. Then, when I showed him the cards I found, he said he was protecting me from her manipulative behavior, said she was trying to buy my affection. But the cards were not manipulative, they were loving, thoughtful messages. I do not know my father at all. The journal documented Amelia's growing identity crisis as her understanding of her family history unraveled. February 15th. Everything I believed about my childhood feels like a lie. Dad shaped my entire perception of Mom, of their marriage, of who I could trust. I have built my identity around being the daughter of a selfish mother and heroic father. What does it mean that this foundation is false? Who am I, if that story is not true? And how do I face Mom after rejecting her for 15 years based on lies? March 10th. Started having panic attacks. Therapist has increased our sessions to twice weekly. We are working through the concept of parental alienation, how one parent systematically damages a child's relationship with the other parent. Everything Dad did fits this pattern. Dr. Brennan says my anger is a healthy part of processing this betrayal, but I am so ashamed about how I treated Mom, the cruel things I said to her during the divorce, the years of cold shoulders and minimal contact. How do I make amends for that? Will she ever forgive me? Reading these entries, my heart broke for my daughter. I wanted to reach through time and tell her that there was nothing to forgive, that I understood she had been manipulated by a master at psychological warfare, that my love for her had never wavered, not for a moment. But the most devastating revelations were still to come. As I turned the page, I had no idea that Amelia was about to uncover Harold's ultimate betrayal, one that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her father. The journal entries from the past year revealed how Amelia's world completely collapsed as she discovered the true extent of Harold's deception. April 2nd. Cannot believe what I found today. Was helping Dad organize tax documents for his accountant. The irony, since I am an accountant. Came across mortgage statements for a house in New Hampshire that I have never heard of. When I asked about it, Dad got flustered and said it was an investment property. But there were family photos on the statements. Someone had been using the address to order picture prints. Dad grabbed the papers from me and said he would handle the rest himself. Something is very wrong. April 10th. Took a personal day and drove to the address in New Hampshire. It is a beautiful lake house. Nice neighborhood, well kept. Was sitting in my car working up courage to investigate further when a woman and 2 teenage boys came out the front door. The woman looked to be in her 40s. The boys looked around 15 and 17. One of them was the spitting image of Dad. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely drive away. Dad has another family. I am going to be sick. My eyes widened in shock as I read this. Harold had another family. During our marriage, the betrayal was so much deeper than I had ever imagined. I read on, hands trembling. April 11th. Called in sick again. Cannot function. Spent all night researching property records for the New Hampshire house. Dad bought it 16 years ago when I was 16 while still married to Mom. The co-owner is named Diane Peterson. He has been living a double life for 16 years at least. The boys must be his sons, my half-brothers. Did Mom know about this? Is this why they really divorced? My entire life feels like a lie. April 12th. Finally called Mom. Asked point blank if she knew Dad had another family. The silence on the phone was deafening. Then she started crying. Said she discovered evidence right before the divorce tax documents for house payments, birth certificate for a son. When she confronted Dad, he denied everything, said she was paranoid. But she had hired a private investigator who confirmed it all. She said she did not tell me because I was already suffering so much from the divorce and I had chosen to live with Dad. She was afraid I would not believe her and it would drive us further apart. She was probably right. I would not have believed her then. I barely believe any of this now. I remembered that phone call. After 15 years of keeping Harold's secret of letting Amelia believe our marriage had ended primarily over his gambling and financial deceit rather than his double life, I had finally told her the whole truth. I had wept on the phone both from the relief of finally sharing this burden and from the pain of watching my daughter's world collapse. Amelia's next entries documented her confrontation with Harold. April 15th. Confronted Dad today. Told him I knew about Diane and the boys. He tried to deny it at first, but when I said I had driven to the house, he changed tactics. Started justifying it, said Mom had never understood him, that he deserved happiness. Then he actually tried to blame me. Said the stress of raising a daughter had driven him to seek comfort elsewhere. As if his second son was not born when I was only 14. The mental gymnastics are astounding. When I asked how he could lie to me my entire life, he said he had protected me from painful truths. The same excuse he used for hiding Mom's cards and gifts. His protection is actually control. April 20th. Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced, brought expensive gifts, and started reminiscing about our good times together. When that did not work, he switched to guilt, saying I was all he had, that he was getting older and needed me. When I remained cold, he got angry, said I was ungrateful after everything he had done for me. I told him what he had done was manipulate and lie to me for my entire life. He left in a rage, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall and shattered. It was a photo of the two of us from my college graduation. Fitting. May 5th. Dad is now love-bombing me. Daily texts about how much he misses me. Expensive deliveries. Promises to explain everything if I will just talk to him. Then, when I do not respond, angry messages about my disloyalty. Classic abuser pattern I now recognize from therapy. The man I idolized my entire life is a manipulative narcissist who used me as a weapon against my mother. I feel such shame. The emotional toll of these discoveries was evident in Amelia's increasingly raw entries. May 10th. Had a complete breakdown today. Called in sick to work and could not stop crying. How do I reconcile the father I thought I knew with this man who has lied to me my entire life? I am angry, so angry, but also devastated. I lost my mother for 15 years because of his manipulation. I lost the chance to have a normal relationship with her during my formative years, and I have 2 half-brothers I never knew existed. Dr. Brennan says I am grieving the father I thought I had, and that is legitimate loss, even if it was based on fiction. May 15th. Final confrontation with Dad today. I needed closure. Met at a public cafe so he could not make a scene. I laid out everything I had discovered the other family, the financial deceptions, the manipulation of my relationship with Mom. Asked him why do all this to his own daughter? He actually seemed relieved to drop the pretense. Said controlling the narrative gave him power. Said he needed me on his side during the divorce to punish Mom for discovering his secret. Said he had never intended for it to go on so long, but once started, he could not find a way to undo it without losing me. The only honest thing he has said in years, probably. I told him I needed time and distance to process everything. He looked panicked but nodded. As I left, he called out, "I did love you in my way." Cold comfort. The final entries showed Amelia's struggle to rebuild her sense of self after these revelations. June 10th. Moved out of my apartment into a new place Dad does not know about. Changed my phone number. Told work not to put through his calls. I need complete separation to heal. Hardest decision I have ever made, but my therapist supports it. Dad kept showing up unannounced, leaving guilt-inducing, messages alternating between love-bombing and rage, classic abuser unable to accept loss of control. Cannot believe I never saw these patterns before. July 20th. Started researching parental alienation syndrome for my own healing. Everything Dad did is textbook emotional and psychological abuse. He isolated me from Mom, reinterpreted her actions in the worst possible light, rewrote our family history, and positioned himself as my protector and ally against her. And I believed it all. The shame is overwhelming sometimes. Dr. Brennan reminds me that I was a child, that children are biologically programmed to trust their parents. That this was not my fault. August 15th. Thinking about contacting Mom again. We have spoken briefly since the revelations, but I have been too overwhelmed with my own processing to truly reconnect. I worry it is too late, that I have hurt her too deeply with my years of rejection. Dr. Brennan encourages me to try, says that mothers have remarkable capacity for forgiveness. But how do I even begin to make amends? What words could possibly address the magnitude of this situation? The final entry in the journal, dated just 1 month ago, read, September 5th. Accepted the London position. 2-year assignment. Part of me feels like I am running away from everything, the mess with Dad, the painful process of reconnecting with Mom, the half-brothers I have never met. Dr. Brennan says it is okay to take space to heal, that sometimes geographical distance creates room for perspective. But I worry about Mom. She has been alone for so long because of Dad's lies. I am going to drop off some boxes at her house before I leave. Maybe I can find the courage to start a real conversation. Maybe it is not too late for us. And that was the last entry. I closed the journal, my mind reeling from everything I had read. The full picture of Harold's manipulation was now clear, more extensive and calculated than even I had realized. But what struck me most deeply was Amelia's journey toward truth, her growing awareness, and the courage it took for her to confront reality after years of deception. I sat in the quiet of my spare bedroom, surrounded by Amelia's childhood possessions, and made a decision. After 15 years of patient waiting, of respecting boundaries that had been built on lies, it was time for me to take action. Amelia needed to know that reconciliation was possible, that I had been waiting for her all along, and that nothing would make me happier than rebuilding our relationship. With trembling hands but resolute heart, I reached for a pen and paper. It was time to write my own entry in our shared story. That night, sleep eluded me entirely. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, drafting and redrafting a letter to my daughter. How do you compress 15 years of lost connection into words on a page? How do you reach across a chasm of manipulation and hurt without causing more pain? By morning, surrounded by discarded attempts, I had a 3-page letter that felt right. I did not accuse Harold or position myself as a victim. I did not demand apologies or dwell on the past injustices. Instead, I wrote from the heart about my enduring love for Amelia, my hopes for her future, and my openness to whatever relationship she felt comfortable building. Dear Amelia, I wrote, I hope you will forgive this letter. After you left yesterday, one of your boxes broke and I found your journal. I know reading it was an invasion of your privacy, and for that I am truly sorry. But having read your words, I could not stay silent. I went on to acknowledge her pain and confusion, to validate her feelings without judgment. I shared small memories from her childhood that contradicted Harold's narrative, casual moments of connection and joy that might help restore her faith in our early bond. I included photographs I had kept over the years, her first day of kindergarten, with me kneeling beside her adjusting her backpack, the two of us making Christmas cookies when she was 10, me sitting proudly in the audience at her 8th grade science fair. Most importantly, I expressed my hope for the future without pressure or expectation. I understand you need time and space, I wrote. London is a wonderful opportunity and you should embrace it fully. But please know that whenever and however you wish to connect, I am here. There is no statute of limitations on starting over. Whether it is weekly video calls or just occasional emails, I will welcome any relationship you feel comfortable offering. I signed it simply, with all my love, always Mom. After sealing the letter in an envelope, along with the photographs, I faced my next challenge: delivery. I could mail it, but that felt too distant for something so important. I decided to drive to Boston and deliver it personally, not to pressure Amelia into an immediate response, but to ensure she received it before her departure for London. The drive to Boston took nearly 2 hours, giving me plenty of time to second-guess myself. What if the letter made things worse? What if Amelia saw it as another invasion of her privacy? What if she was not ready to process any of this before her international move? But as I navigated through Boston's crowded streets to her apartment building in Back Bay, I felt a certainty that transcended these doubts. For 15 years, I had been passive in the face of Harold's manipulations, allowing him to control the narrative out of fear of pushing Amelia further away. It was time for gentle but definitive action. I did not plan to go up to her apartment or force a confrontation. Instead, I left the envelope with the building concierge, a kind-faced older man who promised to deliver it directly to her apartment. On the drive back to Portland, I felt lighter somehow. Regardless of the outcome, I had finally taken a step toward reclaiming our relationship. I had spoken my truth quietly but clearly. 3 days passed with no response. I tried not to obsess over whether she had received the letter, whether she had read it, what she might be thinking. I went about my routine gardening, volunteering, book club, even as my thoughts continually circled back to Amelia. On the 4th day, my phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. Got a new phone. This is Amelia. Received your letter. Could we meet somewhere halfway between Boston and Portland on Saturday? There is a coffee shop in Portsmouth I know. My hands shook so badly I could barely type my reply. I would love that. Just tell me when and where. She sent the details, adding, "Nothing big to discuss. Just thought we could talk before I leave." The measured casualness of her message did not fool me. For Amelia to initiate a meeting after reading that I had discovered her journal was monumental. Whether the conversation would be positive or difficult remained to be seen, but the door had opened a crack. Saturday arrived with perfect New England fall weather, crisp and sunny with leaves just beginning to turn. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, too anxious to time my arrival more precisely. I chose a quiet corner table with some privacy and ordered a chai latte to calm my nerves. When Amelia walked in exactly on time, I almost did not recognize her. Gone was the defensive posture and guarded expression from her brief visit to drop off the boxes. This Amelia moved with a tentative openness, scanning the cafe until her eyes met mine. I stood as she approached, unsure of the appropriate greeting after everything that had transpired. Amelia solved the dilemma by stepping forward and embracing me. It was a brief hug, slightly awkward but genuine. "We are terrible at this," she said with a small laugh as we both sat down. "So you read my journal?" It was not a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes. I know I should not have. I started and could not stop." She nodded, cupping her coffee mug with both hands. I ordered a mocha with an extra shot of espresso. Needed the fortification for this conversation, I think. "I understand if you are angry," I said carefully. Amelia looked out the window for a long moment, then back at me. "Strangely, I am not. Maybe I should be, but mostly I feel relief. I have been carrying those thoughts around for so long, trying to figure out how to talk to you about all of it. This awkward shortcut might be easier in a way." The conversation that followed was unlike any we had ever had. With the journal as a shared reference point, we could bypass years of careful dancing around the truth. Amelia asked questions about specific events from her childhood, and I provided my perspective without attacking Harold. I asked about her process of discovery, and she shared the painful awakening she had experienced. "I never wanted to turn you against your father," I explained at one point. "Even after I discovered his other family, I chose not to tell you. You were 17, about to leave for college, and you had chosen to live with him. I worried that telling you would either devastate you or make you hate me more if you did not believe me. I would not have believed you, Amelia admitted, staring into her coffee. Dad had me completely convinced you were manipulative and selfish. It took years of inconsistencies and my own adult perspective to start questioning his version of events. And even then I fought against the truth. You were a child, I said gently. He was your father. Of course you believed him. But I was an adult when I continued believing him, she countered, her voice tight with emotion. I was 22, 25, 30, still accepting his narrative without question. Still treating you coldly based on his lies. The healing happens now, I told her, reaching across the table to touch her hand briefly. We cannot rewrite the past, but we can create a different future. Amelia's eyes welled with tears. I do not deserve your forgiveness. There is nothing to forgive, I said firmly. You were the other victim in his manipulation, not my adversary. We talked for 3 hours, the conversation flowing from painful recollections to tentative hopes for rebuilding our relationship. We did not solve everything or heal 15 years of estrangement in one coffee shop meeting, but we established a new foundation of honesty and mutual understanding. As we prepared to leave, Amelia asked, "What about Dad? Are you going to confront him about what he did?" I shook my head. Harold stopped having power over my life a long time ago. My focus is on healing our relationship, not on settling scores. My therapist would approve of that answer, Amelia said with a small smile. She paused, then added, I have not told him about London yet. I am still figuring out what boundaries I need with him going forward. Those are separate decisions, I assured her. Whatever relationship you choose to have with your father does not affect what we are building. As we stood on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop, Amelia asked hesitantly, Would it be okay if I called you when I get settled in London? Maybe we could do video chats sometimes. I would love that, I told her, my heart soaring with hope. The hug she gave me before we parted was longer than the first, less awkward, more meaningful. As I watched her walk to her car, I felt something I had not experienced in 15 years, the certainty that my daughter was coming back to me, not walking away. On the drive home to Portland, I allowed myself to cry the cleansing tears of release and relief. The journey ahead would not be simple or perfect, but it had begun, and for now that was enough. 6 months have passed since that coffee shop meeting in Portsmouth. 6 months of careful, intentional rebuilding of the relationship I had thought was lost forever. Amelia has been in London since October, settled into a flat in Notting Hill, and thriving in her new position. True to her word, she calls me every Sunday morning, her time, evening my time. Our conversations started somewhat tentatively, both of us learning how to talk to each other without the weight of Harold's manipulations between us. But week by week, the conversations have grown more natural, more honest, more loving. In December, I flew to London for Christmas, my first holiday with my daughter in 16 years. We explored Christmas markets along the Thames, saw the Nutcracker at the Royal Opera House, and spent quiet evenings in her flat talking about everything and nothing. There were still awkward moments, still echoes of the past that would suddenly arise and need to be addressed. But there were also moments of pure joy of connection, so deep it felt as though the years of separation dissolved. For my birthday in February, Amelia flew back to the States for a long weekend. She stayed in my guest room now, cleared of her stored boxes. We cooked together, walked along the Portland shore, and continued our ongoing conversation about healing and moving forward. She brought photo albums from her adult years, sharing the life I had missed. I showed her my garden plans for spring, the novel I had been working on in retirement, the community where I had built a life without her, but always with space for her return. We have both continued with therapy separately, and during Amelia's visits together, my therapist, Dr. Martinez, has been with me through the entire journey from the darkest days of the divorce to this new chapter of reconciliation. She helps me process the complex emotions that still arise, forgiveness, mingled with lingering hurt, joy shadowed by grief for the lost years. Amelia's therapist in London, Dr. Collins, specializes in parental alienation and has been instrumental in helping her work through her anger toward Harold without drowning in guilt about our estrangement. In our joint session during my Christmas visit, Dr. Collins helped us establish healthy communication patterns and expectations moving forward. The most difficult conversations have been about Harold. Amelia has established firm boundaries with him, limited contact, no financial entanglements, and complete transparency as her non-negotiable terms for maintaining any relationship. He has alternated between compliance and rebellion, sometimes respecting her terms, and other times attempting to re-establish his old patterns of manipulation. I have been careful to support Amelia's independent decisions about her father, without influencing her either way. It would be easy to encourage her to cut him off completely to nurture her anger as vindication for what I suffered. But that would only continue the cycle of manipulation, with me simply replacing Harold as the parent controlling the narrative. Instead, I have focused on reinforcing Amelia's ability to trust her own perceptions and set her own boundaries. When she asks my opinion, I am honest but measured. When she expresses confusion about a interaction with Harold, I help her examine it objectively, rather than imposing my interpretation. As for my own feelings toward Harold, I have found that indifference has replaced anger as my dominant emotion. The man who once had the power to devastate me now seems pathetically small, a master manipulator whose greatest skill ultimately failed him. I do not waste energy on hatred or dreams of revenge. His punishment is the diminished relationship with his daughter, the natural consequence of his own actions. Last month brought a new development that tested our healing process. Through social media, Amelia discovered her half-brothers, now 19 and 21. After careful consideration and many conversations with her therapist, she reached out to them. The initial contact has been cautious, on both sides, the young men as surprised by her existence as she was by theirs. Whether these relationships will develop into meaningful connections remains to be seen, but Amelia is approaching the possibility with careful optimism. Throughout this journey, I have gained wisdom that only this kind of experience could teach. I have learned that truth, no matter how long buried, eventually finds its way to the surface. Harold's elaborate architecture of lies could not withstand the persistent force of reality and Amelia's growing insight. I have discovered that isolation is the fertile ground in which manipulation thrives. Harold's most effective tactic was separating me from my daughter, ensuring that his version of events could not be challenged by direct evidence or conversation. In rebuilding our relationship, Amelia and I have been deliberate about maintaining open communication, about discussing uncomfortable truths rather than avoiding them. Perhaps most importantly, I have learned that forgiveness is not a single moment of magnanimity, but a daily practice of choosing relationship over resentment. There are still mornings when I wake up angry about the years stolen from us. There are still times when a casual comment from Amelia reveals yet another lie Harold told about me, another memory poisoned. In those moments, I must consciously recommit to moving forward, rather than dwelling in bitterness. Yesterday, Amelia called outside our regular Sunday schedule. When I answered, concerned that something was wrong, she was smiling broadly. "Mom, I have news," she said, her excitement palpable even through the screen. "They are extending my London position for another year, but with a twist. I will need to travel to the Boston office monthly for coordination meetings." "That is wonderful, honey," I replied, genuinely happy for her professional success. "But here is the best part," she continued. "I will have 4 days in the States each month, and I was thinking I could work remotely from Portland for 2 of them. Would it be okay if I stayed with you? We could have a regular mother-daughter time each month." The casual way she suggested it, as if regular mother-daughter time was the most natural thing in the world, brought tears to my eyes. 6 months ago, such a proposition would have been unthinkable. "I would love that more than anything," I told her truthfully. As we discussed the logistics, making plans for her first extended stay next month, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not every estranged parent gets this second chance. Not every manipulation is exposed. Not every lie unraveled. The journal that had documented so much pain had ultimately become the bridge back to each other. After we ended the call, I went out to my garden, now awakening with early spring growth. Among the perennials beginning to push through the soil were the daffodil bulbs Amelia and I had planted together during her February visit. They were just showing their first green shoots, promises of blooms to come. Standing there in the gentle Maine sunshine, I thought about the nature of truth and time. Harold had nearly succeeded in rewriting our history and turning my daughter against me through years of patient manipulation. But in the end, truth had prevailed, not through my efforts to defend myself, but through Amelia's own journey toward clarity. For parents facing similar situations, my hard-won wisdom is this: Trust that love is more powerful than manipulation. Trust that your children, given time and space, may find their way back to truth. Trust that even years of separation can be bridged when both hearts remain open to healing. Have you experienced manipulation in your own relationships? Has someone ever tried to turn someone you love against you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more of my journey with Amelia. And remember, it is never too late to heal from family trauma or rebuild what was broken. Thank you for listening to my story, and may your own family journeys lead to healing, truth, and reconciliation.